Shalom, giving all praises to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachakwarash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders at Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations, as always, to the elect. Prophecy Watch, going into a few things that are relevant to the times that we are living in. You know, watching Esau Edom spiral out of control in the light of the wicked, you know, is being put out. Thus said the Holy Scriptures, you know, and their light is literal darkness. Okay. As a matter of fact, when you get Job, the 10th chapter, Job, the 10th chapter, right? It says in verse 21, before I go whence I shall not return, even to the land of darkness and the shadow of death. A land of darkness as darkness itself, and of the shadow of death without any order, where the light is as darkness without any order. Let's look up the word order. All right. Sadar, arrangement, order. And as the scriptures say in the book of Sirach, the 10th chapter, right? So their light is darkness. All right. Sirach 10:1, a wise ruler will educate his people, and the government of a prudent man, okay, will be orderly. His government will be orderly. See that? This is in the GNT. All the officials and all the citizens will be like their ruler. And every one that has been put in a position of power has been likened unto the ruler, as for a morsel of meat, they'll give up integrity and forward unrighteous decrees and unrighteous judgments. Therefore, justice never is ultimately played out. Okay, and the poor are constantly being blamed. And what we're looking at as we're at the end of Esau's world is that he's not fit to rule. And as he is trying to reemerge and, you know, tap back into his pseudoscience, you know, this whole IQ, lie-Q situation, as the elder Malcolm coins it, all right, high lie-Q, all right, the whole intelligence quotient rhetoric that we'll tap into as well today. His government, the world is that he rules does not reflect one of high intelligence or intellect or of a high moral code. It reflects that of one who is a base man, as the scriptures say in Daniel, the 4th chapter, in the 17th verse. This is the matter by the decree of the watchers and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will. All right. And set it over it the basest of men. All right. When you get it in the, see the NLT, and sets over it the lowest men. NLT, even the lowliest people. And Esau Edom represents the lowliest people, although he is able to parade himself around as, let's get one of my favorite of late, Proverbs, the 30th chapter. Okay. Proverbs 30 and 22. Okay, let's start at 21. It says, for three things the earth is disquieted, things that bring quietness to the earth instead of rejoicing, as the scriptures say, the chapter prior. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. Okay, going into the very next chapter. Okay, Proverbs 30 and 22. I start 21. It says, for three things the earth is disquieted, and four which it cannot bear: a servant when he reigneth, and a fool when he is filled with meat. Let's get this in the NLT or the AMP. It says, a slave who becomes a king in the NLT, and an overbearing fool who prospers. And we're looking at an overbearing fool who prospers. Everywhere we're looking, as this man is at the end of this world, it reeks of Satanism, filth, depravity, decadence, moral decay, evil, wickedness, confusion. Nowhere can you look in the earth under this man's rule, especially within his government, not the end result of his brutal rule. Because see what Esau is doing as well, before we play this, another thing he's doing is he is trying to blame the darker races, okay, which are migrating to, because here it is, he goes around the earth conquering, stealing resources, and passing down wealth generations. Because a lot of the Edomites today say, well, they have nothing to do with colonization. Well, when we're calling out your leaders, because you regular Edomites don't got a goddamn thing. When we're talking about the wicked, of course y'all are a part of it, but we're really speaking to the elites, and they have passed generational wealth down. That's in the scriptures that they would do that. So when we bring up colonization, because the very people they colonize, now they're angry that they're coming amongst them to try to get some form of a cool, equal, some decent pay, a cool life, a decent economy, because you went and ruined their economies. And the people that are in power are reaping the benefits of colonization, because this is a family line. The elites are family lines that ultimately pass down wealth from generation to generation. As a matter of fact, let's get that. Let's get the book of Job 21, okay? And 7. Wherefore do the wicked live and become old? Yea, they are mighty in power. Their seed is established in their sight with them. So as we see the people at the forefront of ushering in this NWO, their parents and their parents' parents, their fathers' fathers were all right, involved in this. You see that? Their seed is established in their sight and their offspring before their eyes. So what are they doing? They're passing down a legacy of wickedness. Okay? Their houses are safe from fear, neither is the rod of the Most High on them. So again, this is going into, okay, give me 1 second. This is going into how Esau, Edom, right? The wicked spend their days in wealth. Their children are dancing. So when you look at the people who are in rulership, they're a part of a lineage of evil that has ruled this earth in wickedness, and it's called the beast system. See that? It's called the beast system, man. So as we're looking at Esau get exposed on every front, right? He's getting exposed everywhere you look. I mean, there's just reeks, as the scriptures say, the nation shall see thy filth, man. We'll get that. Marco Rubio says mass migration is a crisis destable in the West. Not fractional reserve banking, not moral decay, not GMOs, right? Which in some senses migration can be a problem. But what is the root source of migration? And is it really the biggest problem? See, these devils do a great job, right, of putting a darker face at, when they are clearly guilty. They do a good job of bringing up weapons of mass destruction. They do a good job of bringing up, DEI, migration, immigration. All right, because he is the accuser, and you got other niggas that buy into this stuff. The red pill movement has went full blown, all right, on their knees for Edomite supremacy, the so-called white man in America. Okay, they may speak against the small hat, but they believe that these Republicans who are in, power, okay, are pretty much the answer, and they're tapping into their pseudoscience, as we'll show you with this skunk Myron. All right. So, U.S. Secretary of the State Marco Rubio has warned European leaders, including British Prime Minister, that mass migration is a crisis destabilizing the West. Okay. Meanwhile, look at what's really going on. You don't think child trafficking, okay, unrighteous decrees, inflation, which your elites are destabilizing this place on purpose because they're bringing in a NWO. Your boy, what's his name? JD Vance said it. He literally said it. He said New World Order. See if we can find it. JD Vance, New World Order. Hit the aspects of his New World Order vision. All right, it's basically uprooting the old order after World War II and establishing a new world, with Babylon being at the front of it. Okay, um, but he literally said that. Okay, he literally said a new world order because they're having to come out openly of their plans. Okay, but he said it. I pulled it up in one of my other videos, but he said basically we're bringing about a new world order. It was in this interview here. Oh boy.
What are we talking about Iran for? What do you mean? America first. Let's focus on our own problems, affordability, all these things. Sure. They think President Trump spent too much time focused on overseas issues anyway, and they definitely don't.
But that's the interview. You can look it up. It's on YouTube. To be honest with you, it's definitely on YouTube because that's where I pulled it up in my last video. But he said, ultimately, we need a new world order. Okay? Let's see here. This is what you do. You go to this interview. You go here. And show transcript. Watch how fast we find it. New World. Let's see here. I think it's around 36 minutes. And boom. Listen to this devil.
Whether there's a massive shift happening now in terms of world alliances long term.
Well, it's definitely, I think, a new world order. I think the president has sought to it. There's a new world order in trade. There's a new.
Yeah, so the new world order, okay? What's been talked about for ages, man. And the people who are at the forefront of it put these actors, okay, these paid actors in front of you to forward their rhetoric to confuse you, man, and make a mess, because ultimately that's what you're witnessing is a big, gigantic mess, okay? A big mess. But as you see the mess, who are they blaming? They're doing the same thing in the UK. They're blaming mass migration as the biggest issue to give the working class or Edomite something to complain about. And pretty soon that's going to work. That's not going to work out. Listen to this devil, because same thing in the UK.
And huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It will cause...
They colonize.
It'll cause...
So now the colonizer is calling migration colonizing. And it's not, and the only, as the scriptures say, he transgressed by wine. He is a proud man. Need to keep it at home. The only answer to the issue of Edomite supremacy is Yahushua returning from the clouds, man. UK is being colonized by immigrants, and it's costing too much. Meanwhile, these dudes got, I mean, I'm pretty sure, what's his name? Jim Ratcliffe. Let's see what his net worth is. Let's see what his net worth is. Let's just ask what his net worth is. A billionaire. Net worth. $17.4 billion. He got his own island. He don't need to be on the Epstein list. So here it is, a billionaire. This is what we're dealing with here. is able to sit and tell you that that his country, the country he so-called represents, uh, is being colonized by migrants, and that's what you regular people should be focused on as the true problem.
Yeah. The UK has been colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it? I mean, the population of the UK was 58 million in 2020. Now it's 70 million. That's 12 million people.
You met recently with Nigel Farage, didn't you?
I did.
Do you think that they would be a good government if they were to win the next election?
I think Nigel is an intelligent man, and I think he's got good intentions, but in a way you could say exactly the same about Keir when Keir came in.
So there you go. Yeah, look at regular people are saying we've had had the time of enough nonsense sayers. This is now the time of truth tellers. But a lot of people ain't falling for it no more. People are through, man. Anyway, getting to the point, I want to play a portion of the Elder's video. This is Elder Malcolm's channel, GMS Maccabean Spirit 144. Okay. The class of the accused are above the unrighteous decrees they enforce on the lower class. Okay. And now Esau Edom is feeling the sting of his own BS. What's that in the book of Job? I think I had it here. Let's get it. Job 18. Yeah, Job 18:5. Yea, the light of the wicked shall be put out, and the spark of his fire shall not shine. The light shall be dark in his tabernacle, and his candle shall be put out with him. The steps of his strength shall be straightened, right? He's in straits now. He's being found out. And his own counsel shall cast him down. So he's being cast down by his own counsel. For he is cast into a net by his own feet, and he walketh upon a snare. As the scriptures say in the book of Obadiah, I have laid a snare for you, O Esau. Okay, and pride, boy, this man's pride is on another level. But meanwhile, what's coming out of his rulership is absolute filth, perversion, and demonic, nasty work activity.
Let you hear that, the dysfunction. I think she opens with election dysfunction. All right, and there's a lot of dysfunction in America, and it's mainly because of the escapades of Edomite men with lie IQs.
Yep.
We've got electile dysfunction. It's time to talk about Donald Trump's loss for the week. Over a dozen members of your administration are in the Epstein files so far. You got an absolutely terrible jobs report. Terrible. We added no jobs last year. You added 130,000 in January. Joe Biden averaged 350,000 new jobs a month. Close the airspace over El Paso for...
That's the thing. These people, they'll do these videos, but they'll think the left is the answer. See, the prophets need to be the only ones talking. But the Lord has put a spirit on what I call the third witness to say things and to bring out things that are true. Right?
10 days and wouldn't tell anyone why. It was because you shot down what you thought was a drone sent over from the cartels. It was a party balloon from a birthday party. You absolute freaking dingus. The National Governors Association, led by a Republican from...
And they put that in the news that we shot down a Mexican cartel drone. All right. And it come to find out it was a damn balloon, a party balloon. And they put that in the news, and you Americans eat it up as if you're under threat by the Mexican cartel. You're under threat by Nero himself. A cruel Lord has been placed over Babylon. And everything that's coming from these people is absolute trash. All of them. When you listen to the Edomite, he's not this wise. Okay, again, like the Wizard of Oz. You know, you hear about him. He's just this great wizard. But when they finally saw him, it was like, well, wait a minute. He's a complete loser. See, these are cavemen who have shaved the hair off their back and put on a suit, right? And basically walked into a blessing, but really they're base people. They're very lowly.
Oklahoma has canceled their formal meeting with you at the White House. Dr. Oz is having to go on a cleanup campaign after RFK Jr. telling people to please, 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 for the love of God, get your measles vaccine. Todd Lyons, the director of ICE, admitted in Congress under oath that there is absolutely no reason for ICE to be at the polls. Attorneys generals across the country are just copying and pasting that statement into their prepared lawsuit templates. Thanks for that. Thank you. Thank you. Lisa Murkowski has come out that she's a no on the SAVE Act. How many votes can Senate Republicans lose on this bill? 0. The answer is 0. 1 is more than 0. So sorry. John Thune followed up with a statement that he is not anywhere close enough to having enough votes to get rid of the filibuster. So that's that. Sucks to suck. Michigan's not giving you their voter rolls. No. So you sued. And a federal judge was like, yeah. And so was the Secretary of State of West Mother effin' Virginia. The citizens of Chicago, Portland, and Los Angeles have successfully kicked the National Guard out. Bye! And you absolutely failed to indict the 6 members of Congress who told the military that they shouldn't follow illegal orders. Democrats have successfully...
So, and that one really got to me because they tried to ignite, a hatred and use the law against people who were upholding the law. All right? Ducking and dodging and keeping remedy away from people. It's a problem because for every situation that's supposed to be a remedy and that's supposed to be a certain level of upholding the law. And then when you have people pointing out the fact that you have people sitting in office that are violating the law of the land and giving soldiers orders to violate that law. And then you have another group of people telling them to not obey unlawful orders. You are not supposed to obey lawful orders. As a matter of fact, as a soldier, it is your job to go against those who push unlawful orders. And the officers and people in charge that are just beneath the people that are making those orders are supposed to rise up and arrest those individuals.
So they're breaking constitutional. They're breaking their own constitution. They're all over the place, man. Not to mention, at least half a dozen of top Trump administration officials appear in the Epstein files. So again, what were we reading? The book of oh no, I want to get back in Proverbs 28:3. When there is moral rot within a nation, its government topples easily. But wise and knowledgeable leaders bring stability. There is no stability in any aspect of this man's system. We are really living in Babel, man. Okay, and again, you Americans have more smoke and more of an attitude towards Michael Vick for fighting dogs. And they say he really didn't fight the dogs. He just ran the ring. All right, not to say he was right or wrong, but the point is, or not to say he was right, but the point is this. Y'all have more smoke for him than this shit that's coming out on your rulers. And again, this left-right paradigm is getting ready to be come to an end. You people are just going to go to clash against their government. But the point is this: this man's system does not mimic, all right, that of a high IQ. So I want to get into a video dealing with the IQ because Esau Edom has, he's really done a good job of, like we went into earlier in this video here. Let's see if I can bring up the video I did with the Apostle Kabar, and Apostle Ramallah, Bishop Tazadakba, and Bishop Manatazak was in there too, and the bishop. Which other bishop was in there? There's another bishop that was in there. But we did a let's go here, daily edification. Let's go live. Boom, this is the video we did earlier. Let's see here. It's called he shall destroy the covering cast over all people. And we went into this video where it talked about the invention of the white race. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, Bishop Ayathon. That was the other one there. And you should watch the video on Daily Edification 4. We went into the covering cast. Let's get that, okay? Because that's pretty much why everyone is still in a deep sleep. But it's all being lifted. The lies, Isaiah 25:7, and he will destroy in this mountain the face of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all nations. And that Esau Edom has really got where he is by the sword, pseudoscience, witchcraft, sorcery, deception. Again, we know the scriptures say in the book of 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter and 8 verse, it says, and then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. And this is why he's being revealed. Everything coming from these devils is just absolute nasty, man. Okay, you look at these titles, you look at how childish they look. Woody Allen was a cannibal. The stuff it's too much. It's too much, man. Euthanizing newborn babies from poor families in Canada. What's going on? Okay, just look at the titles. JP Morgan wire transfer sparks online occult claims over Baal reference. Yeah, all of these top elites, bankers, and they're all tapped into idolatry on the left-hand side, because this is the priesthood of Canaan all over again. And we see you Christians try to now say it because you're watching our videos, but that's all right. Man lets AI rent his body. Man lets AI rent his body. What? More facial recognition. This is just complete. AI toy maker exposed snippets of thousands of conversations its toys had with children. What? Jeffrey Epstein. Then he pops up. It's like, what? He pops up with long hair in a photo. Then you don't know if it's real because we got AI. So it's just a big ball of confusion, man. Okay? And we cannot wait until the Heavenly Father sends his son back so that you devils can go scurrying into those bunkers, and then we come down with those new bodies, okay, to get you in, as the scriptures say, put your ass in chains, man. Okay? And if you're an Israelite and you're scared to tap into that, and you don't believe that, and that's too much for you, well, hey, you gonna go down with them. The covering cast, man, that this man has spread over the nation's eyes is detrimental to life itself. Okay, let's get Jeremiah 51:7. Babylon was like a golden cup in mine hand, making the whole world drunk. The nations have drank its wine and went out of their minds. People have went out of their minds. People have went psycho. See that? People have went psycho, man. 2nd Esdras 9, okay, and 3, there will be earthquakes, national rebellions, international intrigues, unstable leaders, and confused rulers. See, unstable leaders and confused rulers, man. Okay, and Esau Edom is that unstable. He's a confused ruler, man. 2 Thessalonians 2:9, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. Okay. Pseudos, a conscious and intentional falsehood in a broad sense, whatever is not what it seems to be, a perverse, impious, deceitful precept. So when you see this devil pointing out the migrants and the darker nations and this, he is tapping back into his IQ. He's going for what he knows. Okay, these people being amongst us are the biggest problem. This represents a threat to our system. And this is when ultimately you know that they're getting ready to justify bringing the sword, especially as he has been ultimately caught. A shameful spewing has been poured on his glory. So since he's exposed, he's getting ready to come down with great wrath. That's what he's preparing to do. No matter how much wickedness they get caught doing and how unstable the world is under their rulership, they have the media to point the finger and the laws and the legislation to pass to bring forth what they want to do no matter what. Now, the video that I wanted to get into is here debunking the IQ lie. Okay, I just wanted to go into that because I heard the elder Malcolm say in his video the lie IQ. So we're going to tap into this whole IQ rhetoric. So listen to this guy, which he's completely off. But again, some of these dudes sometimes say things that make sense, that are true.
110 years ago, some folks invented this exam that tested certain ways you can like rotate objects in 3 dimensions. And
yeah, because IQ tests will really, how you judge patterns and, different shapes and molds. It wasn't about your overall intelligence. That was but ultimately the devil eventually used it as a means to accuse people, okay, and put them in the box and even sometimes sterilize them, deny them rights, kill them, or murder them, not kill, murder them. All right. Put stuff in their neighborhoods that would keep them from populating by messing with their manhood and their womanhood, their man parts and their woman parts, spraying them, they justify all of the stuff that they've done historically by the fact that the people who they're doing it to are not human. And based upon this science, they should not even be alive. Based upon this science, okay, the lesser of them and the worse we treat these people and point out that they're bad, the better off the world will be. Okay? And they then put it into standardized testing form and used it to label you Israelites dumb, sometimes put you in special ed classes, right? And eventually you started to believe you had a low IQ and that you were dumb and that he was smart and he was wise. We all grew up to some degree thinking a white man had it together and that we need to be more like them and they represent good. Because as we brought out in this video, okay, this video, The Invention of Whiteness, okay, they created whiteness, okay, as a means to deceive the people. Salakia. Let's keep listening to this and then we'll go back there. I lost my train of thought.
they should have called it sort of a cognitive test.
Okay.
But they didn't. They called it an intelligence test. They grabbed the word intelligence and attached it to this test. And then everyone thinks that this test is the measure of your intelligence. It's a measure of the thing you do for that test.
Okay.
That's what that is. I'm not going to deny that. But now you're going to say your intelligence and then use that as proxy for anything else you might do in life? That is criminal with regard to true ambition that exists in this world.
As the scriptures say, the righteous is more excellent damn. The righteous is more excellent than his neighbor. Proverbs 12:26. The righteous is more excellent than his neighbor, but the way of the wicked seduceth him. Okay? So we're more excellent than these Edomites. We're above them. Okay, but the way of the wicked has seduced you. And one of the ways he seduced you and got you drunk is to believe in that he's pushed this pseudoscience along with the bell curve of the IQ. Okay? And this is a way for him to shoot himself to the top of, as the cream of the crop of humanity. Okay? And meanwhile, the other nations and you Israelites as well are subhuman, and you can't get any higher than what you are. This is who they point out. Gangster rap music, baby mamas. When Esau Edom was the original baby daddy, it goes into that in this video, invention of whiteness. He was the one who ultimately had laws passed to where he didn't have to take care of the children he had by so-called black women. Laws were passed so that he can afford to do that. But now Israel is the face of it, and he's giving you a culture that he can continuously point out and accuse. All right. Meanwhile, he's put the term white on himself, right? Which puts him, makes him innocent. Color psychology, there's all kind of witchcraft going on with him labeling himself white. But let's listen to this video and Lord willing, edified.
David O'Grady. Scientific racism is still alive and kicking in America. Today, people like white supremacists Nick Fuentes and Timothy Gordon are recycling the same discredited ideas that eugenicists peddled a century ago.
Charlie Kirk, he was pushing the same rhetoric. All right. Hey, Myron pushes that rhetoric. Right? Myron pushes it.
I hate stupid people. And I'm starting to realize the more I podcast, the more I stream, I realize a lot of y'all niggas are fucking retarded. Fucking drool on yourselves and shit. You niggas better pray. You niggas better pray, bro. I never get in some position of power. You niggas are going back to slavery. Bro, nigga, if I ever become president of the United States, oh my God, day one, IQ test, everybody. Niggas that scored 89, guess what? You got 99 years in the slave camp, nigga.
So if you score under 70, or what did he say, 80? Basically, you don't deserve to have any human rights, and you should be put back into slavery, because the red pill movement has been basically hijacked to push Edomite supremacist talking point. Anton does it. Okay, it's just turned into a bunch of niggas who get some bimbo hoes, OnlyFans models who it's a business deal. You want to promote your brand, you come on my show, and then they just make a fool of them by bringing up talking points, talking over their head, showing how stupid they are, and then this is supposed to be what every woman in the world represents. And people who could consume this red pill stuff without throwing away the bones, because some of the information is decent. It's gotten watered down and played out, but you sit here and consume this shit all day, and ultimately Esau Edom wants another division via a gender war. Okay, meanwhile he's cool, and his rhetoric with the IQ is basically pushed. All right, all of these niggas do it. Charleston White, he does it. Okay, he says some things that are true, but he's ultimately he pushes Esau's bullshit subtly a lot of times. All of them.
Holy shit. Once I put the niggas that put the fries in the bag and all those jobs are taken, the rest of y'all niggas are picking cotton like it's the fucking 1700s. Fuck out of here. Holy shit. Holy shit, you niggas are stupid. I'll give the blacks a chance. If they want to go to Wakanda, we'll send them back. But holy shit. It's no wonder the Chinese are fucking surpassing us in every single way. You niggas are retarded, bro. We got some idiots in here. In-fucking credible. Yo, I'm about to put China out of business.
So he's pushing the whole IQ thing, which a lot of our people are through. Hey, we say the same thing. But boy, oh boy, if he's not a Jake, which I don't know too much about him. I heard he was Sudanese. Someone said he was a Jake. Some people say he's a heathen. But I mean, listening to him, he could very well be a heathen, boy. His ass is going into slavery. How about that? Okay? How about your ass is going to go into slavery? And he's proud as hell too, man. He is proud as hell, man. And the Heavenly Father is getting ready to break up all, because a lot of these dudes are agents too. But anyway,
claiming that IQ is genetically fixed by race.
So do you think it's literally, well, this is just what a black person is when they come out? Or do you think
Myron hangs with this Nick Fuentes guy. They rubbing elbows, and a lot of these dudes are sodomites too. Okay,
that post welfare, LBJ, Great Society, this is what Black Americans have become. And I have a right to respond to that and say that as a white man, I don't want to live there.
Well, I think it's more nature than people would like to believe.
Listen to what this devil is saying. I think this is more of nature. They're naturally fucked up. Keep listening, because this is what's been spread about you Israelites. And when we talk about the accuser of the brethren, this is written in his rulership. These principles are written. Okay, this is what has forwarded Western, thought and rhetoric. Okay,
there's this classic tension of, is it nature, is it nurture, is it cultural, or is it intrinsic, is it racial? And I've always been on the latter side of this among conservatives. Conservatives like to say it's all culture. Black America is the way it is because of hip hop music and the Great Society and that kind of stuff. And I think the uncomfortable reality is, a big part of it is intrinsic. We hate the idea that we're born a certain way and we can never change. And that's just the way it is. And we even think about this in terms of, it's become not so popular these days to tell children, you can be whatever you want to be. Because we know that's not the case. Some people are tall, some people are short, some people are smart, some dumb, some ugly, some handsome.
Okay, so you're saying that if you are born at this space and time as a black person in America, here is the cards that you're dealt with and you can't change it over time.
Something like IQ does not change.
Something like IQ does not change, nigga. You're inherently stupid. Okay? And he believes his own rhetoric. This is the pseudoscience, all right, that forwards Western, thought, philosophy. Now, I did a video on this guy, Sigmund Freud, man. I wonder if I can find that video. Let me see something real quick. Something just came in my head, so bear with me. Not necessarily anything to do with the video, but yeah, Sigmund Freud, he's another devil. What is it? F. Sig. Oh, no. Your videos. Sigmund. Damn. Boom, I think this is it. Okay, I finally found it. I've been thinking about it. Pseudoscience is the foundation of Western culture.
Is absolutely a fact, and you should have been able to garner that really just from what he spoke about, what he wrote about. You can obviously understand the themes of children and sex. He was obsessed with it almost. He introduced concepts of children being sexual at birth.
Talking about Sigmund Freud, which is, he's heralded. He's looked at as a hero. He's talked to, I remember learning about him when I was in school, at least, Let's go here.
Birth, psychosexual development theory, the seduction theory, all surrounded around children. He had a very strange relationship. You can look this up with his best friend, Wilhelm Fliess, who, if you're interested in Wilhelm Fliess, sexually abused his own son, Robert Fliess. Now, how do we know this? Candace,
you're taught, all right. People may still be interested in Freudian psychology, Sigmund Freud, because it was the basis of some of the first psychological theories in Western culture. Okay, that priesthood of Baal. This is what justifies, sex with children. Who are we to say that there should be an age limit on when to have sex with a child? All of this type of rhetoric. So these devils they ain't smart. They're crazy. They're sick. But yeah, I'm gonna reload this video. Pseudoscience is the foundation of Western culture. And when we read Second Thessalonians, when it say the lying wonders, the Greek word is pseudos. Pseudoscience runs the world we live in. Okay?
Now, doesn't change wildly. It only changes genetically over. IQ is a big one, and that's a genetic trait. And so
The cards that you're dealt with, and you can't change it over time.
something like IQ does not change. No, doesn't change wildly. It only changes genetically over. IQ is a big one, and that's a genetic trait. And so that can change over the generations, but not, you can't take an individual that's 75 IQ, which is the average in West Africa, and take them to 100. So,
and Nigerians have higher IQ scores over here than you Americans. But see, this is the devil, man. This is the devil, man.
Two dumb people can't produce a smart person.
I believe they can actually.
Yeah.
But
So does that kind of debunk your?
no, because it's rare that happens. But IQ is a heritable trait, so it's unlikely that happens.
Okay.
This is The Bell Curve. You've heard of it before. It's Charles Murray and Richard Herrnstein's book on IQ that, among other things, became popular in the 90s for saying that different races have different average intelligence. It's a book that gives its readers a scientific, big air quotes there, roadmap for building a racial hierarchy. Which is, and let me be clear that I'm not exaggerating in any way, shape, or form, literal Nazi shit. It is literal Nazi behavior to try and science out that one race's blood is superior to another's. The book used IQ tests.
And there is a superior race. The scriptures say about Jacob and Esau, one shall be stronger than the other. They shall be separated from the bowels. Okay, but see what Esau has done is, because he knows we are the people of the blessing, he gave away his birthright. He has created, or he's pretty much made himself in the form of the chosen and put us on the form of a base man. And this is just written in who he is. He can't stop. This is what Esau, this is what drives Edomite culture, the ability to lie. All right. And then believe the lie. They believe their own bullshit. Okay. And then pull out a statistic. Right. And then if you don't agree with it, ultimately bomb your ass, or because he's blessed with the sword. Okay. This man has historically destroyed everything and justified it by science that literally makes no goddamn sense.
Tests to claim that some racial groups are more intelligent than others on average, and it presented this data as an indisputable scientific fact. While the authors hedge their language a bit, and they say they don't know exactly if it's mostly nature or nurture that's responsible.
It's not racism, it's science. But we then, then scientific racism, pseudoscience, it came out what he was really all about, because the wicked had to be revealed.
Responsible for IQ differences, their conclusions betray that they think there is such a thing as fundamental racial inequality in intelligence that you can observe directly through tests. This difference is something that they think you can, at best, only mask temporarily, but never actually resolve. At the top of the pecking order, the book puts East Asians and Ashkenazi Jews just above whites, and then other Asian, Hispanic.
So Ashkenazi Jew and certain Asians have the highest IQ. Next in line is the whites, but who's at the forefront of setting the IQ? Who's who and what's what? The small hat. He's at the forefront of it. And he hates, he has a problem with you Western Edomites. Okay, there's an ongoing divide there, but he's still going to put his people, all right, above the rest of the nations, man. And then this was used in schools, all right, to where particular, things are taught in Edomite schools, all right, and particular things are taught in Jake schools, all right. The things that are taught in Edomite schools are ultimately what the standardized tests are based in. And then basically Jake does poor, right? Because ultimately the school system doesn't match with our spirit anyway. Some Jakes thrive in it. Majority is just not the way that we learn. It just naturally goes against us, all right? Our spirit. But he then, because you got a lower score, is able to say, well, you have a low IQ, all right? And the students in these schools are treated a particular way. Funding is not given. Horrible food is given, because ultimately this represents a lower people. And then it goes into their eugenics program, to where we are justified because these are weeds in our garden. Margaret Sanger, right? What is Margaret Sanger? Put you on to something. Best known for eugenics. A birth control activist. That's how they're gonna place it because they're the devil. Okay, but she ultimately a eugenist. Margaret Sanger. Let's just type in eugenics. But they're not gonna say that. Margaret Sanger. Let's see. Margaret Sanger, eugenics. Which eugenics means, Eugene means royal. So they're saying they're the royal people, and ultimately these tests prove that these people are below us and so forth. She argued that contraception was a tool for enhancing the race by allowing only those she deemed fit to reproduce. Forced sterilization, all right, and then the IQ test are what justified this. You have to understand that. And they did it to other Edomites as well, which some of them could have been Jake. They did it to other nations as well. They justified killing off a bunch of those Japhites in Australia. Okay? And ultimately, it was the black church that was used by Margaret Sanger to instill the fact of aborting your children in your head and tying it to God. But guess who she's related to? Okay? Just answer the damn question. It is related. I feel like doing all that reading. We gotta get back to the video. Is Margaret Sanger related to Bill Gates? They're not related by blood or marriage. They're related. I remember seeing it, but see what Google does is it hides particular information. But I remember going into this. They're connected through their involvement in reproductive health and population issues. Bill Gates' father, William A. Gates, was a supporter of Planned Parenthood. He gave a lot of money to that, but it was all what ultimately did she say? Okay, she said ultimately they never find out. We want to exterminate the Negro race. You see that set? See what I'm saying? Just going a little bit off script here, but and I remember I had a video that connected how they were, her and Gates were.
I'm Michael Hitchborn, and this is the American Life League Report. The federal government already funnels hundreds of millions of dollars to Planned Parenthood every year, so it should come as no surprise when it funnels your money to celebrate its founder. The Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery recently opened a new federally funded exhibit that, according to the museum's curator, celebrates women who have challenged and changed America over the past century. Included in the list is notorious liberal feminist Margaret Sanger. The National Portrait Gallery website, who was Hitler's director of genetic sterility, Sanger called for the implementation of such programs in the United States, specifically targeting African Americans. The following editorial was published in the 1932 issue of the Birth Control Review.
The Negro problem is one of the most complicated and important confronting America. Whatever the ultimate answer may be, such an attitude brings to light the function of birth control as a necessary agency in its solution. The present submerged condition of the Negro is due in large part to the high fertility of the race under disastrously adverse circumstances.
Yeah, because just like in Egypt, what we're witnessing is Egypt all over again. You heard what she said? The problem is these dumbass niggas they keep having babies at a high rate. Just like in Egypt, where Pharaoh was like, we got to deal wisely with these people because they're populating too much. Because Jake, when they're oppressed, all right, period, is gonna have a lot of sex. Okay?
Thus, the question arises, to what extent birth control has had a eugenic effect upon the Negro race?
If any question should remain about Sanger's racist agenda, a 1939 letter she wrote to Dr. Clarence Gamble should remove all doubt.
We should hire 3 or 4 colored ministers, preferably with social service backgrounds and with engaging personalities. The most successful educational approach to the Negro is through a religious appeal. We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And the minister is a man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members.
So yeah, so they used the preacher. The black preacher was used to push abortions as basically birth control. Okay, and then Planned Parenthoods was set up in your neighborhoods. But what backed this was, all right, IQ testing and many more things.
Hispanic and black people are on the bottom. And already you can imagine how this book might be useful for a reference is something that they think you can, at best, only mask temporarily, but never actually resolve. At the top of the pecking order, the book puts East Asians and Ashkenazi Jews just above whites, and then other Asian, Hispanic, and black people are on the bottom. And already you can imagine how this book might be useful for a whole bunch of far-right debate bros.
What do we do about the fact that
blacks and Hispanics are at the bottom?
The races have what seemed to be, but it hasn't been proven, but the IQ thing is coming closer to proving it in my view. I don't really care about it as much, probably as Nick, but seems to be a natural, not a nature generated disparity, between blacks, Hispanics, Asians, whites, Jews.
The only difference? Nick and Timothy and others like them are now trying to cloak their views behind religious rhetoric. Unlike Margaret Sanger or Samuel Morton, who were overt in their ideology.
Right.
Today's culture wars prefer subtle dog whistles and theological camouflage. In the follow-up video,
They hide it very well. Trump is all of the Elon Musk, he's in on it. They're all on Twitter just cursing niggas out and tapping back into pseudoscience. Okay, and this is debunking the IQ lie, breaking down scientific racism with David L. Gray.
Go deeper into figures like the ones I mentioned and how they smuggle eugenics and racial superiority into discourse by wrapping it in religion. But for now, this is about confronting a specific...
And this is how Jesus was forwarded by Edomite supremacy.
Claim, the one born out of white supremacy and the eugenics movement, that IQ, intelligence quotient, is immutable, genetic, and inherited by ethnicity. It's that there's only one human race and one shared human nature.
And that's not true. Okay, yeah, you do have the human race, but they're separated into different tribes. All right, as a matter of fact, see, even people who bring out that Esau Edom's IQ intelligence quotient is a farce, even they are caught up in his rhetoric and pseudoscience. Let's get Deuteronomy. Was it 32:8? I believe that's it. When the Most High divided the nations, their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam. See, the sons of Adam were separated ultimately through Seth, all the way up to Noah, who had Shem, Ham, and Japheth. 18 nations came from that, and they're not all equal. Okay? It's just that the person, because Jacob and Esau are the top two characters. Esau's power is predicated and rooted in, okay, painting Jacob as a savage so that he can then ultimately trick the world into accepting his left-handed birthright, all right, and him as God on the earth. You know? He set the bounds of the people according to the children of Israel. For Yahweh's portion is his people. Jacob is the lot of his inheritance. All right. So I asked chat, how was IQ used to discriminate against people? So basically, the original IQ tests were supposed to measure things like pattern recognition, logical reasoning, spatial ability, working memory, processing speed. Okay, it doesn't measure wisdom, creativity, moral reasoning, spiritual insight, emotional intelligence, which these are things that should mark a person whether he's a good ruler or not. See, but they tied it to bullshit and basically just forwarded themselves in their lives, man. See, the scriptures say the fear of the Lord, like it says, is the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It says how IQ tests were used to discriminate. Early IQ tests were culturally based. All right. The first IQ test assumed Western education, assumed English efficiency, assumed middle class norms. All right. Let's go to how did it was used in immigration and eugenics. IQ tests were used to restrict immigration, label groups as feeble-minded, justify forced sterilization. And this is what ultimately is happening. Okay? School tracking and segregation. IQ tests were used to funnel minorities into lower tracks, deny access to an advanced education, create self-fulfilling prophecies that we're just stupid. Expectations drops. Once you're labeled, once they accuse you, expectations are drops. Resources are reduced. Outcomes worsen, reinforcing the label. This feedback loop oppression, again, arrested development. That's basically what you can call it. Okay? Arrested development. Let's go back here. Let's play this.
And that left the door open for people to use the test in service of their own preconceived assumptions about intelligence. What started as a way to identify those who needed academic help quickly became used to sort people in other ways, often in service of deeply flawed ideologies. One of the first large-scale implementations occurred in the United States during World War I, when the military used an IQ test to sort recruits and screen them for officer training. At that time, many people believed in eugenics, the idea that desirable and undesirable genetic traits could and should be controlled in humans through selective breeding. There were many problems with this line of thinking, among them the idea that intelligence was not only fixed and inherited, but also linked to a person's race. Under the influence of eugenics, scientists used the results of the military initiative to make erroneous claims that certain racial groups were intellectually superior to others. Without taking into account that many of the recruits tested were new immigrants to the United States who lacked formal education or English language exposure, they created an erroneous intelligence hierarchy of ethnic groups. The intersection of eugenics and IQ testing influenced not only science, but policy as well. In 1924, the state of Virginia created policy allowing for the forced sterilization of people with low IQ scores, a decision the United States Supreme Court upheld. In Nazi Germany, the government authorized the murder of children based on low IQ. Following the Holocaust and the Civil Rights Movement, the discriminatory uses of IQ tests were challenged on both moral and scientific grounds. Scientists began to gather evidence of environmental impacts on IQ. For example, as IQ tests were periodically recalibrated over the 20th century, new generations scored consistently higher on old tests than each previous generation. This phenomenon, known as the Flynn effect, happened much too fast to be caused by inherited evolutionary traits. Instead, the cause was likely environmental, improved education, better healthcare, and better nutrition. In the mid-20th century,
and then, ultimately, you could look it up. It was one that Umar did. I remember he talked about it.
Who invented the IQ concept? The intelligence quotient is an invention of Nazi Germany. All right. That's right. You didn't hear me, so I'm going to say it again. All right. The IQ comes from Hitler's Germany. All right. A European scientist by the name of William Stern in 1913, the same year that Harriet Tubman passed away, and 1 year before Marcus Garvey gave us the largest black mass movement of all time, unequaled by any that came after.
Boy, it's hard to listen to him sometimes, man.
What is a intellectually disabled, not just intellectually?
It's not the one. There was another one. I thought did I put it in my, let me see here. Yeah, he's through too.
First, the concept of IQ, the intelligence quotient, comes out of Germany during the rise of Hitler. It was a German white man by the name of Wilhelm Stern who created the intelligence quotient for population extermination reasons. He was later rejected and put out of Hitler's camp, but the IQ is an invention of Nazi Germany. Now, the first IQ test ever used in the world comes out of France. A European named Alfred Binet, at the request of the French government, was asked to design a test whereby the French government could group or track the students based on how bright they were and identify those who they felt would not be successful in school at all. A white man from New Jersey, Henry H. Goddard, who was a member of the American Eugenics Society, went to France, got a copy of the Binet scales, first white IQ test, brought the Binet scales back to America, made copies of it, and distributed it across the country to white folks everywhere. And
as the scriptures say, his tongue walketh through the earth. Let's get Psalms 73. So as the scriptures say, this man transgresses by wine, right? Habakkuk 2. All right. This is the book of Psalm 73. And 8, they are corrupt and speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak loftily. See, and Jake has accepted this. They're better than me, and, we need to be like them. That's why they're at the top. They're at the top because you got to go into the scriptures, man. The Lord gave it over to the basis of man. One who he's literally a caveman. Job describes it. Okay, you didn't even want him around your dog. Now he's spitting in your face, telling you he's the superior. They set their mouth against the heavens, and their tongue walketh through the earth. Habakkuk 2 and 5. So his philosophy walks through the earth. Yea, because he transgressed by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home. See that? So he transgressed by wine, man. Okay, the wine of Babylon has ultimately made the whole earth drunken.
And Henry H. Goddard himself said that with this tool, we will be able to accomplish our eugenicidal ends. So from the beginning, the IQ test was never meant as an objective standard to see how smart black kids was. It was used to justify access to opportunity and extermination and racial control. Was through the IQ test, which is the #1 weapon of special education. Which is the #1 weapon of special education. They continue to overdiagnose and misdiagnose black children as being mentally retarded who are not. I had a case in Philadelphia this past summer right here. Some white lawyers asked me to come in and participate in the case. Black boy, 8th grade, diagnosed as mentally retarded. I evaluated the brother, found out he was never mentally retarded. But when I looked into the previous IQ tests that were given, they misinterpreted the data. So this young man been walking around with a diagnosis of mental retardation since he was in 8th grade. He's now a young adult. And although he's been told by me and his parents that you are not retarded and you were never retarded, the self-esteem, the self-concept, the self-image is so crushed. This brother probably gonna need therapy for the next 20 years because he bought into what? A superficial label that white society has given them. The gifted movement really started to take form right after the Brown versus Board of Education decision in 1954. The Supreme Court said you could no longer use race as a factor to segregate groups, but they didn't say you couldn't use disability or ability. So the white folks said, guess what? We're gonna come up with a gifted program. We're gonna segregate the white kids from the black kids after Brown versus Board because we're gonna say the white kids are too smart. It's not based on skin, it's based on ability. Problem with that, it didn't work too well because a lot of white kids didn't score high on the IQ test. So they said, guess what? This is working for some white kids, but it ain't working for all. So guess what? In 1963, the same year that the Civil Rights Bill was introduced, a Chicago psychologist created the learning disability. the learning disability. And it is through the IQ test and the learning disability that so many of our children are marshaled into special ed kids where they'll probably never learn.
Yep, and given medicine. That's another factor. Medications are given to you, which pretty much bugs Jake out. Okay, so this man is a complete fraud. Okay, he has not he has all he's done is lie. He has not gotten where he is by righteous, a evil playing field. He's lied about every goddamn thing. Okay, and again, predatory capitalism. Let's type that in real quick. Capitalism. I remember I did a search on that. I said give some examples of predatory capitalism. All right, wage suppression. All right, and they justify it by this science. It says wage suppression while profits soar. Companies keep workers' pay as low as possible while they execute pay, and shareholder profits rise sharply. How it plays out: productivity has increased for decades, but wages have barely moved when adjusted for inflation. Corporations are outsourcing and offshoring contract labor, gig work, automation threats. Workers are told to be grateful to have a job while companies post profits. And then they'll tell you that the true problem is the migrant. Result: people work more but fall further behind. Two incomes are now required for what one income once covered. Workers absorb the risk. Owners collect the reward. Debt traps. Okay. Debt traps. Profit. It says profit comes not from helping people succeed, but from keeping them permanently indebted. Thick clay. How it plays out: credit cards with high interest that compounds faster than people can pay it off. Payday loans that renew endlessly. Student loans that follow people for life. Buy now, pay later systems normalizing living on future money. Okay, result: people work to serve debt, or service debt, not build wealth. Debt becomes a form of quiet control. Financial stress becomes normalized. All right. In healthy capitalism, debt is temporary. In predatory capitalism, debt is the product. Okay. And this is the system we live in. Okay. And who suffers the majority of these things? Jake. Okay. Monopolies that crush competition. Large companies eliminate competitors so consumers and workers have no alternatives. How this plays out: mega corporations buy up smaller rivals or once underprice them until they collapse. Tech platforms control what you see, what you can sell, how you're paid. Once competition is gone, prices rise and quality drops. Result: small business owners disappear. Workers are lose bargaining power. Consumers are forced into closed ecosystems. Okay. Profit from addiction, fear, and desperation. Okay. Revenue is generated by exploiting psychological or emotional weakness. How it plays out today: social media engineers for dopamine addiction, junk food designed to override natural appetite signals, pharma models built around chronic dependency instead of healing. News cycles built on outrage, fear, and division keep attentions locked in. Result: people are mentally exhausted, distracted, unhealthy. Addiction becomes normalized. Profits grow while well-being collapses. And this is the world we live in. And Jake is at the forefront of this. Okay, now, although we live in a time where all of their rhetoric and madness has, even harmed average everyday Edomites, the target was always Jake. Okay, Daniel 7:25, and he shall speak great words against the Most High and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. Okay, let's read it in another version. Okay. He will speak great words against the Most High and wear down the saints of the Most High. He will intend to change the times and law, right? And they will be given to his hand, all right, going into the 350 years. He will defy the Most High and oppress the holy people. See that? And that word wear out goes into constantly harassing. And these particular things we're reading and going into are just a smidget of how Jake has been harassed. Okay, yes, have other nations suffer from these things? Absolutely. Has his own kind suffer from these things? Absolutely. But the target was Jake. It's just that their elites got greedy, because if Esau Edom was allowed to have a piece of the pie, they would be okay with this system. The only reason you see the majority of Edomites complaining is because now Esau Edom, all right, all of his bullshit is falling back on him, man. Okay, so he has not operated in justice. He has not operated in, putting everything on a fair playing field. He's lied. Okay, he's used pseudoscience. Job 20:5. All right, that the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment, though his excellency mount up to the heavens. So he was able to mount up to the heavens. Okay, and be exalted, and his head reach unto the clouds, yet he shall perish forever like his own dung. They which have seen him shall say, where is he? See, he is a disease. Okay, he is a disease, man. Okay. Oh no, I'm not. Yep. This talks about how the physician roots out a long disease. Let's get this in the book of, we'll get a few more things and close it out. Just wanted to go into the IQ. I mean, it's so, so much to be said about it, but I just wanted to kind of tap into it because we're starting to see them bring this up. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Let's get 2nd Esdras 11. All right. Speaking of the ancient Roman Empire, but it's been revived. All right. Verse 41. For the earth hast thou not judged with truth. He's lied. For thou hast afflicted the meek. Thou hast hurt the peaceable. Thou hast loved liars. All right. And a lot of these people who forwarded, this scientific racism, which undermines, again, we just read, he shall defy the Most High. He shall speak great words against the Most High. Renaming the nations, black, white, red, tying, characteristics to them and formulating his own version of reality has really harmed the earth. Especially calling himself white.
What people generally. Imagine a scene from 1676 on the American.
The invention of whiteness, which the Elder Malcolm is the first I ever heard bring this out. You see? Now it's being talked about all over the place. See that? I've never heard anything about this until maybe the apostles brought it out before, but from my understanding, I've heard the Elder Malcolm bring this out, that the term white person wasn't invented until the 1600s, or a white race. And look at why they invented it.
Frontier. A makeshift army of the desperate and dispossessed is on the march. In its ranks, you see poor English farmers who've been cheated out of their land, standing shoulder to shoulder with enslaved Africans who've escaped with their masters. They share a common enemy.
And we know those Africans were Israelites. So here in Virginia, Jake and Edomites who were cheated out of their land banded together, which some of those Edomites were Jake as well. We have to put that out there. Not all of them were Edomites just because they look so-called white, but they banded together. They got together because they had a lot in common. Okay, and basically came against their government. See, and this is why they love to keep people confused and divided, and you pointing the finger at each other, right? So that they can divide and conquer. Again, as what was a saying from someone: if the poor white man can be convinced he's better than the poor black man, the elites have done their job.
The wealthy planter elite who run the Virginia colony. For a brief, chaotic moment, this alliance actually works. They burn Jamestown, the colonial capital, to the ground. The governor flees. The entire colonial project is on the verge of collapse, and the men in power are absolutely terrified. Not just of the violence, but of the idea behind it. That the people they've worked so hard to pit against each other might realize they have more in common than they've been told. Once the rebellion was brutally put down, these elites knew they couldn't just rebuild. They had to rewire the entire social order to make sure this kind of alliance could never happen again. They did it not just with guns and laws, but with a weapon far more powerful and permanent. They did it by inventing a new idea, an idea called white people. Yeah. That opening quote really sets the stage, doesn't it? It defines the mission of this deep dive. We are investigating this idea of whiteness not as some, natural biological thing, but as a deliberate political and economic weapon.
Exactly.
Our sources show how this identity was forged, really specifically, to keep the elite in power. And crucially, to prevent that kind of cross-racial labor solidarity we just heard about.
Yeah, so to convince the farmer that his real enemy was, the so-called black man. Right, so there's a lot of history this devil has just lied about. They said we're all white. They created a white race. Okay, and over years they were able to convince, working class white people, all right, who suffer at their hands that again we're white, and eventually it was bought into.
And then almost brought down colonial Virginia. So we're going to track the actual steps, the historical moments, the legal decisions from those early colonial codes right up through 20th century economic policies.
Right. And when we talk about understanding let's say, the DNA of the United States, this concept is fundamental. It's not just playing with words from the past.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the deliberate, strategic construction of the American social hierarchy. We're looking at how this creation became the foundation, often sort of invisible blueprint of the country.
The operating system.
The American operating system, exactly.
Yeah.
And understanding how it was built, well, it changes how you see almost everything in modern society, doesn't it?
Okay, let's start where that crisis really boiled over. Early Virginia, before 1676. It's tempting to look back with our modern eyes and just see, white masters and black slaves.
Yeah, that's the easy picture, but it wasn't nearly that simple back then.
How so?
Well, the Chesapeake economy, think tobacco mainly, it was dominated by a really thin layer of super wealthy planters and British colonial officials, just a handful of people at the top.
Okay.
Below them, you had this huge, massive underclass just struggling to survive. And this group included tens of thousands of indentured servants. These were mostly poor folks from England, Scotland, Ireland.
And their lives weren't easy either.
Not at all. They were often treated incredibly.
A lot of them were Jakes. People hear Ireland and Scotland and they think white because that's Esau's lies are in your head. We ruled there. A lot of these people are Jakes, man.
Brutally. They could be bought, sold, worked literally to death. Their condition wasn't that far removed in practice from chattel slavery for a period.
And importantly, alongside them were African-descended people in different situations. Right?
Exactly. That's crucial. You had some Africans enslaved for life, certainly.
Right.
But you also had others who were indentured, just like the Europeans, expecting freedom after a term. And interestingly, you even had some free black farmers who owned land.
Some even owned European servants.
It happened, yes.
Yep, and they were just like every Jake was down and out. Remember, Jake was, coming off of rulership. Although the Renaissance came into fruition in the 1400s, certain Jake was still ruling in certain parts of Europe and doing pretty good. All right, and here in America. Okay?
It shows how fluid things were initially, before the lines got hardened. The categories weren't as rigid as they became later.
And the critical point here, the one our sources really hammer home, is that shared struggle. The poor white workers and the black workers, whether indentured or enslaved, they were often living and working side by side.
In the fields together, sharing food, drinking together, even running away together. They absolutely recognized they had a common enemy.
The wealthy ruling class.
The planter elite, yeah. The ones exploiting all of them. And this ruling class seemed pretty indifferent to the hardships of the poor, including things like conflicts with indigenous tribes out on the frontier. That indifference just fueled this massive resentment from below.
You can see how that shared resentment could be dangerous for the people in charge.
Oh, absolutely. This solidarity was a ticking time bomb for the planter aristocracy. Why? Because they were vastly outnumbered, massively outnumbered.
Yeah, and that bomb exploded in 1676.
With Bacon's rebellion, yes.
Now, Nathaniel Bacon, he was sort of an interesting figure himself, not exactly from the lowest class.
No, he was a minor aristocrat, actually. Had his own grievances with Governor Berkeley. Initially, he tapped into that anger about the governor supposedly not doing enough to push out indigenous groups from frontier lands. That was the initial spark.
But it didn't stay.
The same shit happened in the day, man.
Focused on that, did it?
Not at all. It morphed really quickly. It became this huge populist uprising. You had poor workers, struggling farmers, black and white, uniting against the entire colonial government.
So it wasn't just about land anymore.
No, they were targeting the big landowners, the officials, the whole system that was keeping.
That's going to happen again. But the Esau's going to kick it off. Okay?
Them poor and exploited. It turned into a full-blown class war, and crucially, those racial lines that the elite relied on, they were dissolving fast.
And the accounts from the time really show how terrifying this was for the elite, that cross-racial cooperation was real, and it was effective, at least for a while.
Incredibly effective. And even after Bacon himself died of dysentery, the rebellion didn't just collapse. This is a key detail. The very last group holding out, the most diehard rebels resisting the governor's forces.
Who were there?
It was about 100 people.
Yeah.
And the sources say 80 of them were black laborers and 20 were English laborers.
80 black people and 20 English people, fighting together to the bitter end.
Think about that ratio. A huge majority of black fighters still allied with their white counterparts. That specific image, that reality, it sent absolute shockwaves through the ruling class.
They saw the writing on the wall.
They did the math instantly. If this kind of alliance could happen, if poor whites and blacks saw their common interests, the planters' rule was over. They simply couldn't maintain control as a tiny minority over a united, angry majority.
So they needed a different strategy, not just military force.
They needed a permanent wedge, something powerful, something lasting, something cruel, really. A systematic way to buy the loyalty, or at least the compliance, of those poor European workers, to make sure they never side with black laborers again.
And they found that solution in the law over the next, 25 years or so?
Roughly, yeah. Leading up to 1705, the colonial legislature didn't just tweak the existing laws about servitude and slavery. They fundamentally re-engineered the social structure. They invented a new social category. Whiteness. And this culminated in the Virginia Slave Codes of 1705. This is the moment you see the legal construction of whiteness really being locked into place.
And it wasn't accidental, it was policy.
Absolutely deliberate. It was a political act. As one historian put it, it was designed specifically to foster the contempt of whites for blacks and Indians, to break that potential unity permanently.
This is such a crucial turning point. Before 1705, status could be kind of murky, right? Based on things like religion.
Exactly. The line between being bonded or free could be blurry. Sometimes it depended on whether you were Christian or pagan. Conversion could, at least theoretically, change your status or your children's status.
But after 1705?
The law slammed that door shut. It created a permanent, inheritable status based purely on perceived ancestry, on color, on race. It was about creating two totally...
So here it is. Esau Edom loves to throw out, it's all about, you always talking about color. Who created the system of color? Even going back to Linnaeus, Carl Linnaeus. Okay, nations historically have not been known by color. But this is something you devils made up. See?
separate legal realities operating in the same place at the same time. One for whites, one for blacks.
Let's dig into the actual provisions of those 1705 codes, because they really lay the foundation for everything that follows. They created this state-backed package of privileges, however small sometimes, just for being defined as white.
That's precisely what they did. The laws systematically stripped people of African descent of any rights they might have had or hoped for, while simultaneously granting these minimal but psychologically critical privileges to even the poorest European laborers.
Like what specifically?
Okay, so blacks were barred from owning weapons. They couldn't testify in court against a white person. They couldn't own white indentured servants, flicking that earlier possibility. Crucially, slave...
Because whites were indentured servants to Jake, even here in America. All right? They had particular rights, and they weren't slaves and servants forever, but they worked for Jake. And servant and servitude is not necessarily wicked, but it's just that people tie it to how Esau did it.
Slavery was made permanent and explicitly tied to color, passed down through the mother. So if your mother was enslaved, you were enslaved for life. Full stop.
And they defined black very broadly.
Very broadly. The law stated that anyone with any known African ancestry was legally defined as black. This maximized the pool of people who could be permanently enslaved and exploited.
But that's only half the equation, isn't it? What did these laws do for the poor white laborer? The guy who might have been standing shoulder to shoulder with black workers just years before.
This is the insidious genius, if you can call it that, of the plan. The laws systematically elevated his status. Even if his economic reality didn't change much overnight, it shifted his identity. He wasn't just another disposable poor laborer anymore. He was now legally part of the ruling race.
How did that play out in practice?
He got to tap into white supremacy, which now that they see Jake benefiting from some of these very programs, all right, you know, the lower class Edomite, the middle class Edomite, which is really going to upper poor, lower poor, is now mad that the niggas and the immigrants are taking from their piece of the pie. Meanwhile, your elites are walking around with just trillions of dollars playing in your face. So a similar rebellion is getting ready to take place here because Esau Edom is in a snare. See? The elites and the people who they put in front of you, they don't give a damn about Trump and these different governors. They'll have them out there to be the front man, and ultimately the people are going to rise up. It talks about that in the book of Second Esdras 15. Is it going to be political turmoil? People, ignoring the government? These are the things that are coming, man. But as we're tapping into this whole thing of white and white supremacy, it's a farce. It's a lie. It's rooted in absolute madness, confusion, and an intentional lie. This is wicked, man.
Well, remember how white indentured servants could be whipped, sometimes savagely, after 1705? That became illegal for white servants. The standard of punishment was explicitly lowered for Europeans. Meanwhile, enslaved blacks could face horrific punishments like dismemberment for resistance or running away.
So a clear legal distinction in how much pain the state allowed inflicted on you based on color?
Precisely. Also, slaves were stripped of any property they might have accumulated, and the law directed that property be turned over directly to white people.
Wow.
And maybe most importantly, for cementing this division, white servants were now guaranteed certain freedom dues tools, maybe some corn, sometimes the promise of land at the end of their indenture. And critically, by 1727, all white men were essentially drafted into the militia and the new all-white slave patrols.
So the poor white guy literally gets a gun and
this is where you get the patty watch. Okay? Because initially it's supposed to be really a constable and a sheriff. All right, but then they created the patty watch and eventually your neighborhood police, which are Rothschild agents. All right, to oppress. All right, not really bring any justice, just to ultimately keep the cycle of confusion. All right, they're involved in a lot of the drugs that are funneled in the streets, the crime, but ultimately to wear out Jake and to put hell on Jake and to use Jake to blackmail Jake into working against their own people. All kind of wickedness is being done by these devils, man.
and is tasked with policing the black population. That fundamentally changes his role, doesn't it? Let's use that anecdote, the story of Liam and Kofi, to illustrate this on a personal level.
Okay, yeah. Let's imagine Liam. He's an indentured servant, maybe from Ireland, working your brutal tobacco field in Virginia around, say, 1700. Right next to him is Kofi, an enslaved man from West Africa.
Before these laws really take hold.
Right. In 1700, they might share their water jug. They might quietly complain about the overseer together. They might even whisper about running away together. Their shared suffering is real. Their potential for solidarity is real.
Okay. Now, fast forward past 1705. Same field, same guys. What's different?
The legal landscape is entirely different. Liam, just because he's from Europe, is now legally white. This isn't just a label. It has consequences.
How so?
Liam can now go to court and testify against Kofi. Kofi cannot testify against Liam. If Liam has children, they will be born free. Kofi's children, born into permanent slavery.
That's a massive difference.
Huge. And think about punishment. If Kofi runs away and gets caught, he might be branded, whipped mercilessly, maybe even killed or dismembered under the new laws. If Liam finishes his indenture term, he's legally entitled to freedom dues, maybe even that plot of land eventually. He has a future, however difficult. Kofi has none.
And how does the planter, the elite guy, use this?
The planter sees this new legal difference. He doesn't suddenly start treating Liam still poor and largely powerless, but he treats him differently than Kofi. He reinforces that legal status. He might give Liam slightly better rations or easier tasks sometimes. And crucially, he gives Liam that gun and puts him on the slave patrol.
Turning a potential ally into an enforcer.
Exactly. The planter has effectively used the law to buy Liam's loyalty. Not with significant wealth, not with real power, but with the cheapest thing imaginable. Status. The psychological wage of whiteness, as some scholars call it. Liam is now incentivized to please Kofi to maintain the system that gives him this tiny relative advantage.
And that potential for unity.
It's poisoned. It's replaced by a state-mandated, state-enforced social division. Liam now sees his interests aligned, however tenuously, with the planter against Kofi.
That's just incredibly powerful. And chilling. So race, this idea of whiteness, it wasn't some biological fact they discovered.
Not at all.
It was created, purpose-built by the Virginia ruling class. A tool.
A meticulously crafted ruling class social control formation, as historians describe it. Its primary goal wasn't even necessarily to make all white people rich. It was to secure their obedience, their loyalty to the existing power structure, and to permanently break the possibility of working class solidarity across racial lines.
Okay.
And see, as we know prophetically, it's not going to work. All right? We'll end it off with a few scriptures. Isaiah 10:1. Woe unto him that decree unrighteous decrees and that write grievousness which they have prescribed, to turn aside the needy from judgment, and to take away the right of the poor of my people, that widows may be their prey, and they may rob the fatherless. Okay? And Jake was doing that. The leaders of Jake was doing that. Okay? But now this is Esau. Okay? And woe to you. Judgment was brought on Jake for acting like that, doing that. What do you think is going to happen to you devils, man? Let's get Deuteronomy 33, man. So he's pushed himself to the top really, paraded himself around as this great, but it's all rooted in a lie. And these are just just a little bit of the lies that he spread. Deuteronomy 33 and 29. Happy art thou, O Israel, who is like unto thee, O people saved by the Lord. He is the shield of thy help, and who is the sword of thy excellency. And thine enemies shall be found liars unto thee, and thou shalt tread upon their high places. Okay? 2nd Esdras 11 and 41. For the earth hast thou not judged with truth, for thou hast hurt and afflicted the meek, thou hast hurt the peaceable, thou hast loved liars, and hast destroyed the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit, and have cast down the walls as such as did thee no harm. Therefore is thy wrongful dealing come up to the highest, and thy pride unto the mighty. The highest has also looked upon the proud times, and behold, they are ended, and thy abominations are fulfilled. So we're at the end of this man's reign of terror. Okay, his BS, his rhetoric. Okay, it's going to be a day very soon where ultimately the Lord is going to end this madness, man. Okay, because this is too much. This man is absolutely crazy, man. So I just wanted to go into those things, man. Goodness gracious, man. Genetically modified pork. God damn. All right, hopefully I edified. Shalom.